Reddit has become the de facto front page of the internet, serving as the central hub for thousands of various sub-communities to congregate. With such a broad reach, it's difficult for Reddit themselves to facilitate and maintain these communities, leaving it up to volunteers to steer the ship. The Reddit moderator phenotype has become the subject of mockery across the internet, characterized by a rotund physical appearance, paired with an indignant and hypercritical approach to bringing order to their communities. With this, I wanted to look into some of the most pathetic of these men and women essentially working for free for a multi-billion-dollar for-profit company, and see how the smidge of power they receive often goes to their head. The anti-work subreddit is likely one of the most infamous and divisive forums on the internet. Its early days served as a hub for anti-capitalist individuals to discuss the pitfalls of a free market, with an emphasis on achieving a society that completely removes the need for employment. One of the earliest members of the subreddit was Doreen Ford, at the time going by the name of Nick before they transitioned to a different gender. Doreen's work was frequently posted to the subreddit, eventually drawing her attention to the forum, where she began posting articles and think pieces on the subject. She became such a prominent fixture of the community that she was granted moderator permissions, which she balanced on the side while running her personal website, abolishwork.com. It's easy to see why Doreen had become one of the leading figureheads of the movement, as she would often promote premium unemployment benefits in perpetuity. As the subreddit grew, it became ripe for mockery and trolling. Because of their anti-work disposition, users of the forum were frequently accused of being lazy and entitled, and many people questioned the logistics of a society in which no one had to perform labor. Over the years, the subreddit gradually de-radicalized, focusing less on a workless society and becoming a central hub for those interested in Marxism, collectivism, anti-liberalism, and those who simply wanted to complain about the modern workday environment. This shift in philosophy, along with the frequent brigading, led some to believe the subreddit's name should be changed to something less divisive. However, Doreen remained committed to the anti-work movement, maintaining the belief that all labor was exploitative and to be done away with entirely. The subreddit would skyrocket in popularity during the COVID-19 pandemic. To put it into perspective, in January of 2019, they consisted of around 13,000 members, and by April of 2020, that number would eclipse 100,000. With the increasing prominence of working from home and the concept of essential workers, it's unsurprising that those frustrated with the state of the American labor market would flock to the subreddit. Eventually, it would reach 1.5 million members by December of 2021. The forum had grown by over 11,000% in just 3 years, and Doreen was there through it all to steer the ship, frequently making calls to action for prospective moderators to apply and assist in managing the ever-growing community. With this massive growth, they were now well equipped to make a massive impact outside of the internet, and sparked a handful of various campaigns and protests over the coming months. Much like its popularity, criticism of the anti-work subreddit was growing as well, and this would reach a boiling point in January of 2022. The movement had garnered mainstream attention, and conservative media pundit Jesse Waters would host a nationally televised interview with the movement's leading figurehead, Doreen Ford.
So I would like less work hours.
And what do you do, Doreen?
I'm a dog walker.
Okay.
Yes.
How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
Sure, I'm 30.
And is there something you want to do besides being a dog walker? Do you aspire to do anything more than dog walking, or is that kind of your pinnacle?
If I had to do this for the rest of my life, I wouldn't be super complaining. Dogs are wonderful animals. I would love to teach. Work with people and stuff like that.
What would you teach, Doreen?
Philosophy mostly.
Philosophy.
Just introduction to philosophy, critical thinking.
Okay.
So I think laziness is a virtue in a society.
This interview, by all accounts, was a complete disaster. Not only had Doreen made a mockery of herself in the movement, she had also deeply upset fellow members of the community. Wow, could they pick a worse person to interview? Who the f decided this person? Even a remotely prepared person would have stopped the interview and said something like, "This discussion isn't about what I do or how many hours I work, but about the millions of people who feel overworked, underpaid, and taken advantage of by the system." They just let the tenured media talking head run the convo and paint exactly the picture they wanted. The mod did a terrible job, no question about it. This immense backlash ultimately resulted in the subreddit being temporarily shut down, as both detractors and community members alike had overwhelmed the moderation staff with negative comments. After the dust settled, it reopened under strict restrictions, and a moderator would issue an official statement on the subject. We are planning to remove her from her moderation duties and have contacted the admins for the removal of her as a mod. Within this post, the mod goes on to reveal that Doreen had gone to great lengths to prepare for the interview, quote, going out of her way to take a shower for her television debut, a feat seemingly not done often by Redditors. What's more, it appears by all accounts that Doreen had acted alone and against the will of the moderation team, ultimately resulting in her removal. This contradicts statements made by Doreen shortly after her interview, though. She claimed that the interview offer was given to the mods via mod mail and they specifically asked for me. I shared that with other mods and they all agreed that I was probably the best to do it because I've done other media. Following this, Doreen completely fell off the face of the internet, eventually deleting her Reddit account sometime that spring, and left her website dormant for years before she ceased making payments to her domain provider. Today, it redirects you to an Indonesian gambling website, an ironic footnote in the story of someone who dreamt of a world free of capitalist greed. Doreen has become infamous as one of the most bizarre Reddit moderators of all time. However, she is far from the only example. In fact, others have made national headlines for their behavior, including Violent Acres, whose online activity is far more unsavory. It's no surprise that Reddit's terms of service policies were far more relaxed 15 years ago than they are today, although you may be surprised to learn just how lenient they were. These policies were what allowed subreddits like r/jailbait. Since then, the corporation's restrictions have lightened immensely, which in and of itself has sparked debate regarding free speech on the internet. Ironically enough, these subreddits were born out of an overwhelming emphasis that your personal liberties online should remain unchallenged. The man behind communities like these was the well-known user Violent Acres. The now infamous Redditor was responsible for the creation of hundreds of divisive communities. This also included subs like r/incest, r/Hitler, and r/Chocobitch. The most infamous, however, was the aforementioned r/jailbait. Acres first gained mainstream attention with another community of his titled r/beating women in August of 2011, when a user drew attention to the subreddit stating, "These are real women, these are real crimes, make this stop, Reddit." Linked to the post was a now deleted image of a woman being assaulted by a larger man, posted by none other than Violent Acres. In response to this situation, the notorious troll told the Daily Dot, "People take things way too seriously around here." I was not surprised by the outrage of the person who made the post, because I see it all the time. What was surprising was the community support for it. Most posts that complain about these things never do very well, and are quickly buried or deleted. I think it's interesting how many people defend my right to act the way I do while decrying my posts themselves. A few months later, the jailbait subreddit would face similar scrutiny. At the time, it was the second most searched term leading to the websites, with the first simply being the term Reddit itself. Despite its increasing popularity, it remained online for some time. That was until it was revealed that one of the users had directly shared legitimate CSAM material on the platform at the request of some of the forum's members. This was problematic for obvious reasons, but it particularly complicated things for Reddit themselves, as the jailbait sub was able to exist on the basis that it was technically legal. Posting images of teens in bikinis or provocative poses did not meet the threshold of violating the law on its own, but now things had gone too far for Reddit to excuse, resulting in its permanent suspension. It needs to be understood that Violent Acres was not directly in favor of the material featured in the subreddits he created, or at least that's the excuse he gave. He claims that he did not directly support the assault of women, nor did he have an affinity for sexualizing teens. Rather, he was just an internet provocateur that did everything he could to push the boundaries of free speech. What's more, he was able to operate on the website in this fashion thanks to his shared beliefs with Reddit staff. The general manager of Reddit at the time would address the increasingly controversial state of the platform. We're a free speech site with very few exceptions, mostly personal info. And having to stomach occasional troll subreddits like r pics of dead kids, or morally questionable subreddits like r jailbaits, are part of the price of free speech on a site like this. With that said, some members of the staff were not entirely pleased by Violent Acre's behavior, understandably finding the subject matter deeply offensive and troubling. What no one could deny was that he served an important role for the website that further incentivized them to turn the other cheek. That being the trolls' willingness to moderate all the major NSFW subreddits for free and doing a surprisingly good job for what it's worth. Former lead programmer for Reddit, Chris Lowe, said the following about the notorious figure. Once we came to terms, he was actually pretty helpful. He would come to us with things that we hadn't noticed. At the time, there were only 4 of us working, so that was a great resource for us to have. We just stayed out of there and let him do his thing, and we knew at least he was getting rid of a lot of stuff that wasn't particularly legal. I know I didn't want it to be my job. It goes without saying that Violent Acres was an integral part of the early days of the social media sites, moderating over 400 different subreddits, and even creating FAQs for other prospective Reddit moderators to learn the ropes. Most importantly, and the biggest theme across the entire video today, he was willing to do it all for no pay. This would all come to a head though in October of 2012 when journalist Adrian Chen published an article to Gawker titled Unmasking Reddit's Violent Acres, the biggest troll on the web. The article discussed much of what has been covered thus far, as well as revealing Acres' full name and identity for the first time, a man named Michael Bruch. Chen's article did far more than just expose a random internet troll. It revealed that the inner workings of Reddit were heavily reliant on a man who was seemingly permissive of violence against women and the sexualization of minors. Both Reddit staff and the community at large were defensive of Michael following the article's release, culminating in a mass banning of all Gawker articles from 60 different subreddits. The main reasoning for this was the fact that Adrian had doxed Michael, an act they believed had crossed the line. This is particularly ironic when you consider the act of doxing itself is not inherently illegal and is protected by the First Amendment. Reddit had permitted the many subcommunities Michael moderated on the basis that they were not technically against the law, prioritizing free speech above all else. But now that Adrian was using his own free speech, they were doing everything they could to silence him. Under Reddit logic, outing Violent Acres is worse than anonymously posting creepshots of innocent women, because doing so would undermine Reddit's role as a safe place for people to anonymously post creepshots of innocent women. I am okay with that. Michael was eventually fired from his day job working as a software programmer, and in spite of initially claiming he had no regrets, he offered an apology for his behavior. Well, I am to some degree apologizing for what I did. Again, I was playing to an audience of college kids. And you know, when 2 years ago, when all of this was at its heights, the audience was appreciative and supportive of the sort of gallows humor I put out there. In the current day, Reddit's policies are far more strict, and a person like Michael would never have a chance to become an active member of the platform, let alone one of its most prominent moderators. Violent Acres thrived in an era in which the site was willing to look past essentially any and all behavior, but even as this time period came and went, Reddit moderators would continue to cause problems. This time being subtle and far more petty, such as Sol Invictus. If you spend any time on Twitter, you are likely familiar with the name Ian Miles Chong. He is most notable for his role as an American conservative political pundit, despite not being an American, rather being born and living in the Asian country of Malaysia. He has been ripe for mockery throughout his entire online career, and I made a video just about him if you want to watch. Less known, however, is his time spent as one of Reddit's most prominent moderators and his eventual ban from the platform. Though Ian's story doesn't begin there, as he had a long history as a power-hungry moderator on various other internet forums beforehand. Most notable of these was the RPG Codex, an online forum dedicated to the discussion of role-playing video games. It's here that Ian cut his teeth on the prestigious profession of forum moderation, and rose to such prominence that he sits on the website's Wall of Fame, with his full Christian name listed as Ian Miles Rex Sol Invictus Exodum Chong. Sol Invictus and Exodum are two usernames Chong used on the websites, the latter of which being the one that would lead to his unceremonious removal from the forum. It all started when Ian made the decision to ban a user by the name of Roleplayer. The individual began a thread relating to the implementation of religion in video games, and a different person chimed in with a rebuttal to the suggestion. That's when Ian entered the picture and began arguing with the thread's creator. The two went back and forth for some time, culminating in Roleplayer calling Ian a racial slur. This greatly upset Ian, who promptly told the thread's creator to get a life and banned him from the website. When other moderators discovered this event, they reversed Ian's decision and revoked his administrative privileges. This revelation was extremely frustrating for Ian, who had served as a founding member of the forum. He then began demanding that graphics he had created for the site, such as the forum's header and background, be removed. I can withdraw my contribution from the site if I am no longer a participating member of the staff. They weren't gifts. They were what I brought to the table, and now that I've been kicked off the table, I'm taking back what I brought with me. I have wasted my time and effort. Ian had been well known for more than just overbearing moderation, as frequent outbursts and other dramatic responses like these were what had made him particularly infamous. Notably, in private chat messages later that same day, Ian claimed that Roleplayer followed him around the forums to provoke and antagonize. This story is relatively believable, as his reputation for emotional outbursts made him a prime target for trolling and ridicule. This is best exemplified by the creation of a personal wiki page dedicated solely to him, which provides a list of different phrases that upset the young Ian, categorized by efficacy on a scale of 1 to 10. Also available on the wiki are chat logs that show Ian describing himself as Aryan and extremely racist. On top of this, he denounces his Asian identity, preferring to call himself Chinese, which he claims is not Asian. Ian moved on from the RPG Codex and eventually created his Reddit account, Sol Invictus, sometime in mid-2008, although he would remain equally, if not more controversial here. By the end of 2011, Ian had amassed nearly 250,000 Reddit karma, and became a moderator in a handful of prominent subreddits, such as Ask Reddit, Politics, and Today I Learned. Ian had become such an important fixture of the Reddit community that he was given the prestigious honor of being named Redditor of the Day on April 12, 2010. Unfortunately, Ian's Reddit empire would soon come crashing down. In January of 2012, a post was made to report the spammers, discussing Ian and his abuse of his moderation powers. Sol Invictus is the biggest spammer on Reddit. He makes money from your clicks on GameRanks.com, GlobalPost.com, and probably other sites that he repeatedly posts here. @StillGray is Sol Invictus. He says right on his Twitter account that he is an editor for GameRanks. The post alleges that Ian had been contracted by various online news publications to signal boost their articles using his prominence on the forum. The OP had previously called out Ian for his behavior in subreddits he moderated, and supposedly used his administrative permissions to remove the accusations. The Reddit community rallied against Ian and was able to have him banned from the platform on March 23rd that same year. Ian had now been banned from 2 separate websites for his abuse of moderation, and would ultimately decide to step away from his profession as a forum moderator altogether. You'd think being banned on Reddit would be rock bottom, although Ian has only managed to sink lower following his suspension. He spent some time being a prominent figurehead of Gamergate, a movement about ethics in game journalism or a harassment campaign against women in gaming, depending on who you talk to. Ian was a staunch supporter of the journalist side of the movement, even describing himself as a turbo-feminist in his Twitter bio. Ian became one of the many proverbial punching bags of the era, and eventually became so fed up with the ridicule that he directly apologized to Gamergaters and immediately started grifting on the other side of the aisle. The main aspect of Ian's history on the internet is his opportunistic mindset. In the infancy of Gamergate, he called into question the severity of ethics in game journalism, but only a few years later he was actively attributing gaming journalism's demise to a lack of ethics. This is why Ian has been regarded by both sides of the political spectrum as a grifter. In the current day, he maintains a high level of prominence on websites like Twitter. However, the perception around him remains extremely negative, just like it always has. I do have to give it to him though, he's the only person in this video that found a way to make money as a Reddit mod. Ian was and always has been opportunistic, finding a way to make a quick buck online by any means necessary. And while he was attracted to the money, other moderators are fueled by their desire for power, even if it means taking over entire communities they have no real interest in, such is the case of soccer. XKCD is a webcomic created by Randall Munroe in 2005, which focused on subjects like math, science, and programming. It was a relatively niche series and developed a small but passionate audience. A subreddit was created in 2008 for those interested in the web series to congregate, though it eventually went dormant, with the sub's only moderator going inactive for over 2 years. In 2011, a Reddit user by the name of Soccer took notice of this and submitted a request to usurp moderation privilege of the subreddit, which he was eventually granted. Soccer was also the moderator of a few other subreddits, most notable being r Holocaust. Anyway, Soccer would remain as the head mod of XKCD for some time with little issue. However, things would begin to change in late 2012, when he added controversial subreddits to the community sidebar. These included r Conspiracy, r Men's Rights, and r The Red Pill. This was a particularly confusing decision as the series creator, Randall Munroe, had made his feelings on conspiracies and the men's rights movement crystal clear, and his audience would likely consist of those sharing a similar sentiment. Members of the community were quick to point this out and request they be removed, although Soccer showed no signs of capitulating to their demands. In response, a separate subreddit called XKCD Comic was created, and many began flocking to the new page instead. Users attempted to promote the new subreddit in the original one run by Soccer, who would go out of his way to block all comments referencing it or the controversy. That's when the user WhyBoth decided to go behind enemy lines to bring down the entire operation. He sent a message to Soccer directly, requested moderation permissions, and to his surprise was accepted. Shortly after being introduced to the community, he was flooded with requests to remove the sidebar links that Soccer had added, eventually doing so 1 week after becoming a moderator. He was able to succeed in this because Soccer was not particularly active in the subreddit. WhyBoth described Soccer as a subreddit squatter, who intentionally owned as many subcommunities he could get his hands on, regardless of his personal interest. XKCD was just one of the many subreddits that he had control of, so it would be difficult for him to notice the changes once they happened. The community celebrated the change, eventually abandoning the new sub to re-engage with the original one. Sadly for them, Soccer was still the lead moderator, and would eventually discover the changes made to the page. On January 26, 2014, WhyBoth was shocked to find out that he had been stripped of his moderation privileges, and the sidebar once again included the conspiracy and men's rights subreddits. The community was furious and rallied to have Soccer removed permanently. A petition was created to reinstate WhyBoth and remove Soccer, a decision that Randall Munroe himself would personally support. I agree. I can confirm that I absolutely would not want the kind of person who would link to r Men's Rights, r Conspiracy, or r The Red Pill in charge of any XKCD related community. Ugh. Thank you so much for trying to straighten this out. I hope you're successful in contacting the admins. The situation continued to grow in prominence, eventually being picked up by the subreddit drama community and receiving an article in the Daily Dot. These only caused the overwhelming negative sentiment to grow, and the XKCD subreddit was brigaded with negative comments directed towards Soccer. In retaliation, he enlisted the help of an r Conspiracy moderator to assist in removing negative posts. Though eventually, after enough backlash, it appears that Soccer gave in and removed the sidebar altogether, and his newly enlisted internet janitor, Flytape, posted, Everything is back to normal. There are no links to anything off topic on the sidebar. Everything is normal. Please offer any constructive, non-witch hunt suggestions you may have. This post was met with overwhelming backlash and was later deleted. Ultimately, there was no clear resolution to the issue. Reddit administration did not seem to intervene on behalf of the XKCD community for some time. However, there was a surprisingly positive event just on the horizon. Soccer was eventually removed as a moderator from the sub in August of 2014, and a new regime was installed that returned the community to its former glory. Soccer continued to moderate a handful of other pages for some time following this controversy, but he was eventually banned from Reddit altogether sometime between May of 2019 and July of 2020. The reason for suspension is not entirely clear, though it likely has something to do with the increased restrictions set in place by updates in Reddit's terms of service. The meltdown of XKCD is certainly one of the most chaotic in Reddit's history, but subreddit mutinies such as these are far more common than you might imagine. In fact, our next subject received far more attention for all the wrong reasons, that being the meltdown of r/art. When you consider the types of subreddits available on the platform, it's not entirely surprising that drama or controversy could find its way into the community. But even the most generic and harmless of spaces are not spared from power-tripping mods causing chaos. The best example of this is a more recent controversy involving r/art. It all began in November of 2025, when the user Strawbear, aka Hayden Clay Williams, posted one of their pieces to the forum. Users of the sub shared their positive feelings about Hayden's art, including one user who said, "Kinda need this for my office. I'm a therapist who explains boundaries weekly." Hayden responded to this post informing the user that they had prints available for purchase if they were interested. Little could have anyone known that such an innocuous comment would become one of the biggest dumpster fires in the site's 2-decade history. To Hayden's shock, he was banned for this comment, and reached out to the moderation staff for clarification. "Are you seriously banning me for giving more information on my work?" "No, I'm banning you for breaking our rules. But I can remove all of your old posts as well if you'd like." "Just delete the comment and move on. Sorry I mentioned the word print." "Your history has been removed. You're welcome." At this point, this isn't about breaking the rules. This is you having some sort of vendetta against me. My comment broke Rule 9, I get that and apologize. This reaction is overstepping boundaries. "I don't even know who the f*** you are. That's some major main character energy there," says the power-hungry mod who deleted all my posts because I asked a question. The modder then proceeded to report Hayden for harassment, causing his account to be temporarily suspended for 3 days. As you can imagine, people were outraged. Even if you made the argument that Hayden's comment was against the subreddit's self-promotion rules, a permanent ban was clearly a massive overreaction. People began flooding the subreddit, intentionally using the word print to antagonize the moderation staff. In response, they completely locked down the sub and prevented anyone from posting. This situation exploded once it was picked up by Moist Critical, who lambasted the moderators and their decision.
It is a pretty fascinating one, and also not its first rodeo. The r/art subreddit's got some hostile mods.
This situation was now far too large to ignore, and the entire mod group would raise the white flag and resign from their positions. Although it appears that this was not entirely accurate, as a handful of mods, including the ones who interacted with Hayden, were forcibly removed. The subreddit remained shut down until a post made by the new moderation staff was put up, making a jab at the former staff by including the word print in the title. On top of affirming to restore the sub to its former glory, they also revealed they would be unbanning Hayden as well as nearly 300 users who were unfairly removed. Later on, the team would go through the past year of bans and made a shocking discovery. They determined that out of the 5,093 bans enforced by the previous mods, only 63 were deemed valid, which truly speaks to just how cutthroat the Jannies had been. Hayden was the catalyst, but the issue had been clearly persisting for years. The story of the art subreddit is cut and dry, such is the case of many of the stories discussed thus far. But what if I told you one of the most prominent Reddit moderators of all time is also a pedo? Well, maybe you're not surprised by that fact, but what if I told you they were also a woman? Ghislaine Maxwell is one of the most notorious sexual predators of all time, arguably only coming second to her close companion and partner in crime, Jeffrey Epstein. As you can imagine, Ghislaine is no stranger to conspiracy. However, her name has been brought up in one theory that you might not have expected. Crazily enough, some believe that Ghislaine Maxwell was at one point one of the most powerful and well-known Reddit moderators on the platform, and while nothing is confirmed, the theory has serious legs. On March 12, 2006, a Reddit account was created sporting the username Maxwell Hill. As an early adopter of the platform, they quickly became a prominent member and found themselves moderating a handful of subreddits, such as Our Politics, Our Technology, and Our World News. Their frequent contributions to the site eventually led them to become the first Redditor to ever achieve 1 million karma points, and was at one point listed as the most influential person on the internet. Over the past 6 years, Maxwell Hill selections have made Reddit what it is. You could even think of Maxwell Hill as a stand-in for Reddit as a whole. Reddit has democratized editorial. It is the newspaper by and of the people. Anyone can have a say as to what should be news there. Still, on the board where stories go to explode, no one has done more to detonate them than Max. It wouldn't be an understatement to say that Maxwell Hill was the most famous person on Reddit, and they were deeply involved in massive events in the site's history. Most notable of these was the removal of Our Technology from the front page. This fallout began because when the moderation staff for the subreddit grew less active, remaining moderators began relying on auto-moderator tools to filter out and block various terms to automatically reduce spam. One of those less active mods was Maxwell Hill, whose status as a lead moderator allowed them to bypass auto-mod restrictions and make posts containing terms most couldn't use. This led to a massive outrage amongst the community, and in response, Maxwell began frantically removing moderators and replacing them with new ones. For the next few days, Our Technology became solely about the drama, and shifted focus entirely away from its original subject matter. This greatly frustrated higher-ups at Reddit, as they made the decision to remove Our Technology from the front page of the site. Hi mods, the past few days have not been your finest hour. We feel that your focus has shifted from moderating your community to squabbling over who is added to the mod list. We've come to the conclusion that you are no longer effectively managing your community or moderating the subreddits, and we have decided to remove you from the defaults. If you can manage to look past your petty squabbles, add new moderators, there needs to be a significant increase in active mods, and function as a team, we might consider adding you back. This event was notable to get a full-blown article in the Daily Dot, who seemed to cover all of this Reddit drama back in the day. The piece only fueled the ever-growing intrigue around Reddit's most powerful user. Maxwell continued actively posting to Reddit for the next few years, often multiple times a day. Strangely, looking at their Reddit account, we can see they suddenly ceased posting almost 7 years ago, on June 30th, 2020. One of Reddit's most prominent figures completely abandoning their account without warning is a bizarre occurrence in and of itself, but it becomes even more strange when you consider that Ghislaine Maxwell was arrested only a few days later on July 2nd. Because of the name Maxwell and the timing of her arrest, many believe that Ghislaine is the true owner of the account. But the similarities didn't end there. People began digging and discovered a handful of other gaps in activity that line up with events in Ghislaine's life. Maxwell Hill went 3 days without posting to Reddit from August 6th to the 9th. During this time, Miss Maxwell's mother passed away. The user also claimed to be born in December, the same month as the disgraced British socialite. The Redditor has also discussed spending time in the UK and heavily implied that it was their country of origin. Most damning of all, however, is Maxwell Hill's propensity to debate the age of consent.
I did say the age of consent should be 12.
This included correcting people about the laws for said subject and posting articles discussing the legalization of CSAM. As you can see, this is far more than just a crackpot theory, and it would likely be more surprising if this account wasn't actually owned by Ghislaine herself. Notably, in the recent file dump released by the DOJ, references to the Maxwell Hill account can be found. None of them directly implicate Ghislaine as the owner, however it is clear that the proper authorities have investigated the situation. While many believe the conspiracy is a foregone conclusion now, there are some who have attempted to disprove its legitimacy. Vice would publish an article calling the theory incoherent and evidence-free. They go on to describe the real owner of the account as a victim of a harassment campaign, and said they were now being unfairly associated with a convicted child predator. An alleged screenshot was also posted from around this time in which Maxwell Hill denies being associated with any islands. However, this evidence is far from conclusive. It goes without saying that the image could be fabricated, or perhaps a technologically savvy troll may have hacked into her account to stir the pot. It also begs the question as to why Maxwell Hill has never returned to clear their name and dispel the rumors publicly. And it honestly kinda just sounds like Vice got trolled. Whether it was Ghislaine or not, you can't deny that Maxwell Hill seemed to actually be a half-decent moderator for the most part. The same cannot be said for Awkward the Turtle, who was widely regarded as one of the most sinister and power-hungry Reddit moderators of all time. Most of the people we're discussing today can be described as power moderators. Not only do these individuals moderate popular subreddits, but they have moderator permissions in various sides of the site spanning a wide range of subjects. One of the most egregious examples of this is our next subject, Awkward the Turtle. While only creating their account in 2015, they had already become a mod in over 1,000 communities by January of 2020, quickly amassing a karma score of over 2.5 million. People call him the most unemployed person on the internet. I doubt anyone would be shocked to learn that Awkward was not universally loved by any means. In fact, they had become a prime example of the power-hungry volunteer archetype, and was used to demonstrate just how toxic they could be. One user in particular claimed that they were banned from the subreddit r mildly infuriating for breaking the rule, no automatically generated usernames. This was obviously a ridiculous rule, and one that did not exist on the subreddit's rules section. In reality, the individual had been banned shortly after pointing out Awkward's low number of Instagram followers, heavily implying that they banned the user for no reason. I love how Awkward the Turtle moderates over 2,000 subreddits and has an ego so fragile it would make Max Stirner roll in his grave. The mod responded, "Yet you claim that I, a lowly janitor on the internet doing it for free, am a threat to a free and open platform. What free and open platform? And how do I threaten it? I recommend saying less silly things." Awkward was far more than just a power-hungry mod banning anyone they could, as they frequently used their status as a moderator to post and pin ragebait comments in the many subreddits they had permissions in. This boiled over after a post on r mildly infuriating hit the front page. It shined light on a recent article published by Business Insider, which covered a controversy surrounding the Norway women's volleyball team being fined for wearing shorts instead of bikini bottoms. Awkward, a moderator for the sub, left a comment underneath saying, "This is why men shouldn't be allowed to be in charge of anything." Members of the sub were quick to point out how ridiculous it was for a mod to pin their own comments, something that was a frequent occurrence. The pin feature is afforded to mods to enforce the rules, but Awkward was blatantly abusing their power. Users of the sub began making posts to the mildly infuriating sub about Awkward, one of which would reach over 9,000 upvotes and make it to the front page of Reddit before being deleted. What's worse, anyone who challenged them was almost instantly banned, further complicating the situation. Word about Awkward the Turtle quickly began spreading, both inside of the community as well as outward, with the general consensus being extremely negative. That's when the greater Reddit community rallied together to deal with Awkward for good. They began flooding the mod mail of r mildly infuriating, eventually pressuring the moderators to remove the user. But they didn't stop there. A petition was created to have them banned from the platform altogether, and received over 14,000 signatures. However, nothing would come of this for some time, and Awkward would continue to moderate thousands of subreddits without issue. That was until their behavior became problematic for other communities as well. In October of 2022, Awkward the Turtle was removed from the Watch People Die Inside subreddit after they had abused their power, sent unacceptable messages to the community, and responded to complaints with hostility. Moderators had supposedly tried to intervene in the past, however Awkward was a senior mod, and revoked the administrative privileges of anyone who challenged him. In spite of this, Awkward was still spared from major consequence for the next 2 years. Things all changed in June of 2023 though, when they were finally banned from the platform. As you can imagine, someone as dedicated as Awkward wouldn't go down without a fight, and began lambasting Reddit higher-ups in private DMs. "I did literally nothing! Jagaz acted like a dumbass, he's still top mod. I get suspended for some f***ing mystery reason. I don't even talk to him. Is there any rhyme or reason to recent moderator actions? Why was I suspended? My accounts will be restored because whatever dumb admin suspended me will eventually be held accountable for doing so. Just like all the other times some dickless admin decided to suspend me for no reason. History repeats itself!" As for what exactly caused their suspension, it's not entirely certain, although it's not surprising considering their behavior. In a sense, Awkward the Turtle embodied the classic Reddit mod stereotype, although there is one individual who manages to surpass them in this regard. Of course, I'm talking about the former lead moderator of livestream fails, Stale2000. Over the last decade, live streaming has exploded in popularity. The medium offers a unique and candid experience for viewers to enjoy their favorite content creators, something that is both a strength and a weakness. Because of the unscripted nature of live streams, slip-ups and mistakes are a frequent occurrence. It's this dynamic that made our livestream fails, also known as LSF, the central hub for funny and interesting clips from the world's biggest live streamers. While the name may suggest a focus on fails, the subreddit is home to all different sorts of clips, from epic gamer moments to public callouts and drama. They're no stranger to controversy, as there is a well-known back-end Discord server full of prominent live streamers and LSF mods. This has led many to believe the moderation would play favorites, and remove posts regardless of if they followed the rules or not. That said, one Redditor in particular has become extremely controversial in recent months from this community. I am of course talking about the former head moderator, Stale2000. Questions about Stale and his ability have been a topic of discussion for some time. However, things truly kick off in January of 2026, with the announcement of Million Dollar Fan. Many were suspicious of the announcement when it first dropped, promoting itself as a reality TV show featuring prominent live streamers and their fans, and offering a grand prize of $20 million. Or at least that is the best interpretation I can offer, as the official description of the show is extremely vague and unclear of its premise. As if that wasn't enough of a red flag, the mansion used in promotional material appears to be AI, further drawing into question the legitimacy of the $20 million prize pool, which would be the single largest amount in television history. To make things even more suspicious, the fine print for the terms of entry further implicated nefarious intentions. $20 million prize pool for a paid entry contest, and their refund policy says no refunds. Also, $1 million fan terms of use, section 18. You can go to court and sue them, a judge or jury, for disputes arising from their terms. You can't join with other users to bring a group lawsuit, class action. You must resolve disputes through a private arbitrator in British Columbia. You waive your right to seek punitive or consequential damages. So basically, if they end up scamming you and everyone else, then GG no re. It was also discovered that the listed business address for the show was in a small dilapidated shop next to a falafel restaurant. The wide consensus was that the $1 Million Fan show was a massive scam. And those skeptical of the event would ultimately be proved right when the show's website and social media were suddenly removed from the internet. This was a serious issue for Stale2000 in particular, as he promoted the event on LSF with his alternate account. What's more, Stale had been removing negative and critical comments directed towards him and the event without merit. Many began calling for his moderation status to be revoked. And after an investigation by Reddit's Code of Conduct team, he was officially removed as lead moderator. The story could have ended here, and Stale could have walked away as yet another disgraced Redditor stripped of their authority. But no one could have expected the lengths he would go to vindicate himself in the eyes of the public. A few days later, Stale would upload a video to his personal YouTube channel titled "A Message to the CEO of Reddit, Spez, from our livestream fails former top mod." And yes, he looks exactly as you'd expect. In his opening statement, Stale describes the subject of Reddit moderation as that of deadly seriousness.
This video is about a topic of deadly seriousness, and that is of Reddit moderation and the state of your platform.
Perhaps this was intended to be a self-aware joke. However, Stale's own behavior in this video betrays any sense of irony, as he spends the next 20 minutes trying to convince the internet at large that Reddit Jannies should be treated like celebrities.
To summarize, Reddit moderators should be treated like celebrities or influencers, not because they deserve respect or anything, but because they actually have real power and influence.
Stale spends the majority of the video delusionally bragging about all of the different internet celebrities who came to him begging for his help, emphasizing his importance and subtly implies responsibility for the success of many of the most successful live streamers.
Let's just talk about LSF. Think of all the streamer careers that have been created because of LSF. Think about the even larger number of streamer careers that have been destroyed because of LSF, because some clip went viral about like something bad that they did. I have had major live streamers who are effectively celebrities come to me and beg to kind of remove, negative posts about them. An even crazier story is the time when some Twitch employees found me in person and borderline begged me to make sure LSF is not used to destroy the multi-billion-dollar company Twitch. Well, guess what? One single post on LSF caused all of the streamers to drop out and destroyed a $20 million opportunity. Right or wrong, you can think I'm a good moderator or a bad moderator.
Worst of all, he continues to defend the event, claiming that it was cancelled after all the streamers pulled out due to bad publicity. Because if it wasn't for the likes of Moist Critical, they would have had that $20 million cash prize for sure. This video was met with universal backlash, and many took note of how Stale almost perfectly encapsulated the Reddit moderator phenotype, both in appearance and demeanor. Please tell me it's a skit. Jesus Christ, it's John Reddit. His most inflammatory comment about the celebrity status of mods was more than just a loose comparison. It was reflective of his deepest desires. Now that he was no longer responsible for moderating the subreddit, Stale made a sharp pivot into content creation, and has posted a handful of videos to his YouTube channel in relation to the controversy. And dude, I'm begging you, please shave it off. The bio section of his channel claims that his videos are simply parody, but this is extremely unlikely. Stale consistently attempts to walk the line, describing himself as an internet troll while dedicating most of his energy towards genuine criticism and discussion about his status as a moderator.
That is like, I could just destroy Charlie by doing this. Oh shit, like, do I do this? Two. Destroy Charlie.
No matter how much he attempts to hyperbolize his persona, it is undeniable that a core of his internet identity is based in reality. This is exactly why Stale is now regarded as one of the most pathetic Reddit moderators of all time. In conclusion, at the center of all of these stories, a common theme can be found. The role of an online janitor attracts a certain type of person. While some may have a genuine interest in being an integral part of a community they care about, it cannot be denied that ulterior motives come into play. Those who feel attracted to the role are likely seeking something they can't get in their real lives: power and control. And as long as Reddit exists and relies on the unpaid labor of terminally online basement dwellers, there will always be another one ready to humiliate themselves for our amusement.